Well, thank you all for coming today. Our committee is the Committee of Jurisdiction for Oversight, for Transparency, and to look for fraud or any failure to properly disclose accurately the facts. To that end, after review of recovery.gov and recovery.org and a number of other releases by this administration, we have today sent a letter to President Obama that calls for him to properly disclose how he reached what appears to be arbitrary and not analytically backed numbers as to jobs saved. Additionally, looking at, even if we accept his numbers, looking at the anemic amount that has actually been saved or, quote, gained, what we discover is that the amount of loss to date exceeds what we believe any additional stimulus could do. To that end, we're trying to get from the administration the underlying calculations, if you will. If you were a math teacher and you see that the outcome of the calculation doesn't appear to be right, you can get half credit for showing us how you got, in most cases, approximately 13 new jobs per $1 million spent. We need to find that because, in fact, the 1983 stimulus by 1986 was found to not be able to track any effective job creation. Now we find the president claiming specific job creation with a number that we do not see the work product for. So we're trying to be very respectful, but it's very clear, not just because of the interest of the press, but because of our obligation as a committee, that we have to ask for that and we have to get it in order to be full partners in the distribution of these dollars and any future requests likely to come from the administration. The letter was signed by all 6 of us because we believe it really crosses all of the jurisdictions of all the subcommittees. And with that, I'd like to have Mr. Jordan give his thoughts.
Well, let me thank the ranking member for this. Look, when the stimulus was passed, the administration said we're going to create jobs and unemployment would reach a high of 8 and then begin to come down. We all know that's not the case. In fact, we lost jobs. Unemployment is 9.4% across the country, and of course, in the district I get the privilege of representing, it's much higher. It's between 11 and 16% in 11 counties that I represent, and it went up just a week ago Monday when the president closed down a GM facility in our district. So just 2 quick points that I would make. First, as the ranking member said, show us the math. I mean, I remember my first algebra teacher, Mrs. Jess. If you gave her the answer and you didn't show the work, you didn't get the points for it. And she said, Jordan, show me the work. We're saying, President Obama, show us the math. Show us how you arrive at these claims of jobs created or saved. We want to see the methodology. We want to see how, in fact, this works because we, frankly, just don't buy it. And then the second thing I would point out is, we haven't seen jobs created, but one thing we do know for certain is we've seen unprecedented involvement by the government in the private sector. We just came from a meeting where the CEO of a major bank where the CEO of a major bank was pressured to further the deal with, complete the deal, with Merrill Lynch, to accept TARP money during negotiations with the Treasury and the Fed. So what we do know is just this unprecedented level of involvement by the government in the private sector, and that's very, very dangerous. And so with that, I would turn it back over to our ranking member.
Well, thank you. I share deep concerns about the direction this money is going. I think it's very simple that it's not too much to show us the data, to actually show us the information. We should be able to see how jobs are supposedly created and how they're supposedly saved. We're asking for the math, the calculus, so that we can better understand how these numbers are come to and if this is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Also terribly disappointed in recovery.gov. This was supposed to be the way that the public could access this information and decipher it for themselves. It's terribly inadequate. It's not populated with the right data. Consequently, we, as the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, cannot review the information, nor can the public. I think it's paramount that the public have access to the data that the President and the Speaker says is pertinent to this issue. But that information is simply not there. There has been no methodology expressed nor has there been any scientific data to back up any of the claims that the administration has made on this issue. The President promised, quote, unprecedented levels of transparency and accountability, end quote. That's simply not happening. The President promised, the Speaker promised, that this stimulus package was about jobs, jobs, jobs. It's not. We've seen government jobs growing, but we haven't seen that translate into the private sector. Those of us that are skeptical of it just simply want to see the data. We don't think that's asking too much, and we would hope that that would happen sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Congressman Bilbray.
Look, I think everybody agrees, both sides of the aisle, that one of the big problems we had with the last administration was a lack of independent oversight. And just because an administration says something is so doesn't necessarily mean it's so. Just as we've learned from the past with the last administration, now's the time, while the new administration is fresh, just starting this journey in this administration, that we get it on the right track of first of all saying you will get appropriate oversight now. We won't allow the neglect that we saw in the last administration. And we're not just accepting something as being fact just because the White House says it again and again. No matter how many times you say something, it doesn't make it a fact. This is a chance for the administration to prove its item, not only before the Oversight Committee, but before the entire people of the United States. There was a great comment and a great statement made by the American people that they wanted to change, they wanted to see how things could be done better. And one of the things they wanted was transparency. They did not want a White House that said, just trust us, what we tell you is true is true. They want a White House that's willing to take the time to show the American people that what they're saying is in fact a fact. And that's all we're asking for today.
When the stimulus bill was passed, we were told there are no earmarks in it. So by definition, then it's not wasteful. Let me tell you, earmarks are only one way to waste money. Let me just give you a couple of examples and to point out the absurdity of the notion that any government spending is going to create long-term sustainable jobs. In the stimulus bill was money, $800,000 to repave a backup runway at an airport that has 3 takeoffs and 3 landings a day. In my own state, $1.5 million is to be used to convert road signs from metric to miles. Another one that I think the irony will be apparent, there was $500,000 in homeless funding for Union, New York, a city that did not request the funding because they have no homeless people. There's no homeless problem yet. And therein lies the irony. We're told that there's some metrics, I guess, that will tell us that jobs are being created because this money is being spent. Yet we have a program here to spend money for a program for homelessness that does not exist yet. So there must be some inherent assumption that this money isn't going to create jobs, yet we're told that somehow it is. And so I think that this is an appropriate effort to get some honesty into these numbers, and so we work from the same page, and I commend the ranking minority member for bringing this to the attention of everyone. Thanks.
Hi, Congressman Patrick McHenry from North Carolina. The first issue I want to raise is whether or not deficits and our debt have an impact on employment. What we've seen in the bond markets over the last 2 weeks is that, in fact, our government deficit that is going to run to the tune of almost $2 trillion this year, the largest recorded deficit we've had on record in this country. That those deficits do, in fact, raise the cost of lending, hurt our rebound in housing that had a very small amount of recovery this year, and in fact hurts our long-term prospects of economic prosperity. So in fact, the stimulus plan that we passed, this Congress passed, in the $787 billion spent through the stimulus or set forth in the stimulus is in fact having a negative impact on our economy and dragging down our people's ability to get affordable lending, to bring our housing market back, and to grow small businesses. The second issue I want to raise is, as the ranking member on the Census Subcommittee, the question I have to the White House is whether or not they're including the new census jobs that have been added. The census was given $1 billion out of the stimulus bill. The $1 billion, according to the White House, creates a certain number of jobs, according to their formula. They have not released that formula, unfortunately. But that $1 billion was for communications, for advertising. Well, that's an appropriations I supported. As everyone knows, the census occurs every 10 years, and the Obama administration did not invent the census. And so, regardless of whether who'd be in the White House and regardless of a stimulus plan, we would have spent money on the stimulus, on the census anyway. And accordingly, we also have regular hires, temporary hires with the census. As any American will tell you, 2 part-time jobs or 2 temporary jobs do not equal 1 full-time job, as the White House is outlining it. Furthermore, within the Census Bureau, according to the Office of Management and Budget, the President's Office of Management and Budget, the 200,000 people hired by the Census Bureau in 2009 equal 17,197 full-time positions, according to Office of Management and Budget. And next year, when the census hires 700,000 workers, that will be calculated to the equivalent of 105,391 full-time positions, full-time equivalents. Now, apparently the White House determines government funding and government spending, creating jobs in a much different way, and in fact includes multiples of what the Office of Management and Budget has raised. These are issues that we have to be resolved, and the White House should answer for their calculations.
Before we take your questions, I just want to make one thing very clear for the record. Earl Devaney, who is the IG who's been put in charge of overseeing the stimulus money, the recovery money, and recovery.gov, has agreed to and been in consultation with both the majority and the minority. He does not have the economist, wherever they are, that came up with the numbers for the jobs saved, and he has been quite candid about the difficulty of putting together a truly transparent website like recovery.gov. He has forecasted that it could take easily a year, and our committee has been working with them on XBRL and other technologies that could, in fact, make this possible. So I want to make it clear, we're not attacking those who have been put in charge of trying to make this happen, but the unseen hand of an unknown economist or many unknown economists give us cause for concern and cause us today to send a letter to the President asking that he provide us those persons involved and, as Mr. Jordan said, show us the work so we can understand how you come up with so many jobs per $1 million, no matter how it's spent. With that, we'd all be happy to take your questions. Yes, sir. Well, so far our working relationship with the majority, with Chairman Towns, has been extremely good. As you know, he recently issued a fairly significant subpoena for information that we wanted and had not yet received. He's continued to work with certainly today's hearing with Jim Lewis, with Kevin Lewis. Ken Lewis, thank you. We just finished it. But with Ken Lewis, was the first of what we've agreed to be a series to look into the actions of both the past administration and the current administration. So our expectation is we will be granted some work product to explain how they're reaching these numbers. We certainly think we have a right, and I believe Chairman Towns will be just as engaged in this. I delivered him the letter before it was sent to the President. I informed him about it well before when we were still finishing it, because although we believe that it was appropriate for us to send it, we do that in consultation with the majority. Yes, ma'am.
Given that OMB hasn't even issued its final guidance for reporting jobs yet, is it just premature for anyone, the administration or critics, to be talking about job numbers at all?
It is premature for the administration to be putting numbers out, but they are putting numbers out. And to the extent that they came up with something other than simply an arbitrary number based on macroeconomics, we want to see the work. In particular, we want to begin to understand different portions of the stimulus package spent money differently. And as they begin to come up with their assertions of what type of spending creates the most jobs and the most long-standing jobs and the best investment for the future, all of that should fit into any calculation of a future stimulus. And as you know, we had less than a dozen hours from the time the stimulus hit until the time it was passed in the House. So we certainly need to know this in advance. We can't be asking it when the next stimulus is put together because there isn't time. Yes, ma'am.
And the question about the census, OMB has already issued their numbers on the census hires that have been well planned for many years, including the address canvassers that are out now and finishing up their work, as well as the additional folks that will be out next year. They have also calculated in terms of the raw numbers what the census will hire and what that means in full-time equivalents. Now, the question would be, is the White House using OMB's numbers to determine how to count jobs, or are they making something else up? And it's apparent that if they're including the census numbers, they are using quite a bit of hocus pocus to expand those numbers into something larger so they can tout politically.
Any other questions? Should we speak longer? Thank you all for coming.
Thanks.